There's too much to be said for a group chat, and we have high priority business to attend to at membership meetings. So here's a video. This'll be short. In a word, the purpose of establishing regular meeting rules is fairness. Let's look at an ad hoc process for making decisions. It starts with a small group of members deciding to take action. Maybe this starts with one member convincing other members and prospective members to take action. Someone in the group then adds the proposed action to a meeting agenda. If there's a consensus and members are interested, then the group takes action. If there's no consensus, the group takes no action. And if there's consensus, but no one volunteers to step up and do the work, then there is confusion. People ask, are we doing this or not? This scenario typically leads to no action being taken. To put it simply, an ad hoc process for making decisions amounts to people do things on their own initiative or nothing happens. Neither the consensus nor the structureless approach is really a fair process. To underscore the point, consider the simplest possible decision that the group needs to make. Who can speak? If there are no rules, there may be a contest. People talking over one another, people interrupting and stepping on another person's closing words so that they can be next to be heard. Of course, the meeting facilitator has the most control over who speaks and when. If I'm chair and there are no meeting rules, then I can speak as long as I want, as often as I want, because I chair the meeting. That is obviously not fair. No one can do the job of chairing meetings fairly just out of their head. That's why at a convention of a union or a political organization, the rules of the convention need to be established and agreed to before the convention can make any other decisions. Now, it might be said that, sure, a meeting that does not have any rules is not always fair, but at least it's democratic. After all, there are no rules. What could be more democratic than that? No one can force anyone to do anything. That's great. And no one needs anyone's blessing or permission to get things done. That's also great. But how do we explain to newcomers how decisions are made? No one can say, because there are no rules. It's just vibes. The question of whether a meeting is being run democratically and fairly turns into a personal question. The question, do you like the chair? And do you think they're doing a good job? Structurelessness does not prevent the formation of informal structures, only formal ones, said civil rights activist Joe Freeman at a talk at the Southern Female Rights Union in Mississippi in 1970. She continues, as long as the structure of the group is informal, the rules of how decisions are made are known only to a few. On the screen now are some prompts from a questionnaire my partner and I wrote to raise awareness of anti-democratic culture in organizations like ours. Every social formation has rules, from the playground to the boardroom to a pack of animals. As Joe Freeman points out, a laissez-faire approach to meetings just makes it harder for those outside the in-group to have a meaningful say in deciding what actions the group should take. The further question arises whether it is even desirable to have laissez-faire decision-making. After all, how can commitments to coalition partners be honored if chapters and committees operate however they see fit from moment to moment? Robert's rules are widely considered the gold standard of fair and democratic rules for meetings of a democratically run organization. They are tried and true, having undergone revisions and endured continuously since General Robert came up with the first draft just after the Civil War. Many of the common sense principles of fairness we all strive to observe in our meetings can be found in Robert's rules. For example, one reason why we take minutes is to safeguard the right of absentees to know what they missed. Robert's rules are not always appropriate. For brainstorming, breakout groups, or discussion in depth, you would not want to use Robert's rules. And you don't have to. Part of Robert's rules is to allow ad hoc, informal discussion without any formal rules at all. When he chaired meetings, Robert himself preferred to operate informally and by consensus. The rules are for when there is no consensus. The difference between Robert's rules and ad hoc, anything-goes meetings with no rules at all is that every member has the right to demand regular order. In other words, has the right to demand that the rules be followed. We do not need to hire a parliamentarian. It's okay if none of us are experts, even the chair. If the chair is uncertain about how the rules work, they have several options, including asking the meeting attendees to decide. There is always, of course, the risk of abuses by those who know the rules well enough to weaponize them against other members. But here as well, there are protections. Every member has the right and the authority to challenge any abuse against the spirit or the letter of the rules. Robert's rules are used by many organizations. In the TV show The Wire, a drug-dealing gang, the Barksdale organization, tries adopting Robert's rules because the head of the crime family learned about them in a college class. Comedy ensues. Real-world organizations that use Robert's rules include many labor unions, nonprofits, and community organizations, including, famously, the PTA. Our own local and our parent union, CWA, both use Robert's rules at conventions. In fact, CWA recommends, in CWA's Union Operating Procedures Manual, that all CWA locals adopt Robert's rules to cover any questions not explicitly spelled out in the local's bylaws. CWA provides sample bylaws that locals can begin with as a template when creating their own bylaws. Although our locals' bylaws take large chunks, word for word, from CWA's recommended bylaws, the adoption of Robert's rules is conspicuously missing. This means there is no real basis for challenging decision-making procedures that members think unfair. Except at conventions, there are no rules because our locals' bylaws do not state any. As for whether Robert's rules are too complicated for members to grasp, or whether we are not sufficiently large enough or sufficiently established enough to use Robert's rules, consider that many college student organizations use Robert's rules. Student organizations are notoriously difficult to organize and sustain, and their meetings are frequently attended by newcomers who don't know anything about the club. So, my partner put a little flowchart on the back of her student club's voting cards. It was not too hard to use. It was not too hard to explain. It did not require that meeting attendees be long-standing members or that they be intimately familiar with the ins and outs of Robert's rules. And it did not make people stop coming to meetings. My partner was a stickler for making sure these rules were followed. During the time she served as student advisor to YDSA at Georgia State, the chapter grew to be the second largest in the country.